Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Cheyenne Malone, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheyenne Malone. You are watching another edition of The Small Business Show. On today's show, we are pleased to welcome author, former 7-Eleven CEO, and TEDx speaker, James Keyes. His book, Education is Freedom. The Future is in Your Hands. It's a self-help guide for readers and to the road of freedom in so many different meanings, I feel like, too, as well. So we'll have you break it down and talk a little bit about that. But James, you know, before we talk about your book, let's talk to our audience about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I am not your small business, traditional guest probably, because I ran very large businesses, but I see myself as a small business person. I always have, actually. My very first business was a trucking company. My brother was a over-the-road driver, and I bought a Peterbilt back in the first days of investment tax credit, and built that into a small company, which I think helped my big business career, ironically, because it taught me cash flow, taught me the importance of cash flow as an entrepreneur. So I've always, even though I had the privilege of running 7-Eleven, and I was chairman and CEO of Blockbuster, I really see myself as a corporate entrepreneur, not a traditional corporate employee.
And I would, imagine that would help you on all levels, right? Because you've been with bigger, major companies, and now you're getting in on the author roles and giving advice and offering some gems here. Let's talk about that. Education is freedom. What inspired you to turn this direction and start writing?
Well, this was actually the result of being in a corporation that had 400, 500,000 employees, and we had a challenge. If you think about 7-Eleven, it's often first-generation Americans behind the counter. Mm-hmm. And you say, well, why is that? And I tried to understand what caused that preference for first-generation Americans to come to the United States, want to be a 7-Eleven franchisee or a Subway franchisee. Well, it turns out that they had a lot of individual freedom to operate the store, to be an entrepreneur, to be independent. But then we started looking at the challenges we had in hiring from our own country, from our own inner city kids. If someone could come to the United States and see that opportunity, why wouldn't someone from, inner city Detroit see the same opportunity at 7-Eleven? So we created a foundation that would reach into public schools and encourage those kids and say, look, there's a $50,000 a year job at the end of this learning journey, but you've got to get a high school degree and at least a couple years of an associate's degree or a 4-year college. And this job is sitting here. Let us help you find that path. So we did. And it worked pretty well. But what led to the book was the success of this foundation, yes, but the realization that there are so many kids like me. I was one of those kids that didn't think he was ever going to get to go to college because it was prohibitively expensive at the time, as it is today. And yet I figured it out, and I found that path. And so my goal is to share that same, secret to success, if you will, academic, professional success, entrepreneurial success, to share those same secrets with everybody else so they too can find their full opportunity.
Education is Freedom, the title of your book. Elaborate on what that means to you.
Well, it took a long time to realize that I wasn't working for money. And a lot of us are in that trap that it's all about how much we earn or having the cash to go do things. But what I discovered is that the more I learn, the more I can do, and it had nothing to do with money. So learning how to speak another language. I did a lot of business in Japan. Learning the language gave me such an advantage, just an understanding their culture, and it opened up a whole new world of the Japanese culture that I never would have experienced. So it had nothing to do with the money that I had to go explore Japan. It had to do with understanding, learning the language, understanding the culture that made it a far richer experience. That same lesson applies to virtually anything. I fly airplanes. I had to learn to fly airplanes. I'm still learning because airplanes basically are a license to learn. And then if you want to keep from killing yourself, you have to keep on learning.
Yeah.
And it's a constant learning process. So, but it gives me such amazing freedom to be able to fly. So the investment in learning pays off huge dividends in the freedom that you have down the road.
And when you think about, the target audience for your book, who did you write it for?
Well, it started out, I was writing it for kids because I saw all of these kids that they're sitting around saying there's no opportunity. I can't afford college. I can't do this. I can't do that. We've got this victim mentality, sadly, that many adults are perpetuating. They're creating this narrative that, you don't need school anymore, that sort of thing. And so I wrote the book to say, look, the future is the subtitle for the book is "The Future's in Your Hands," because with technology today, I had to learn from a set of borrowed encyclopedias or ones that my mom brought back from the grocery store. And today, there's so much learning power right here in the palm of their hands. Having trouble with math? Go to Khan Academy. It's free. And you can, if you put in the time, you will learn math. So there's really no excuse. So I wrote the book targeted at children to be able to say, you too can do this. There's no excuse, especially with access to technology. But as I got down the path, I started doing research. I realized there's a much broader audience. And, society at large needs this book. Jefferson, all the way back to our founding fathers, said that the successful continuation of a democracy, the ability to sustain a democracy, is heavily dependent on an educated populace. And we're kind of losing ground. We have fewer and fewer people going on to college compared to other countries. We are performing pretty miserably, candidly, in the math and science department versus other countries. And so we've got some work to do, I think, as society in general, to recognize the importance of education to our future of the country and the future of humanity in general.
What are some key takeaways you want readers to walk away with?
Number one, as I said, the subtitle of the book, "The Future's in Your Hands." Don't take excuses. I just, there are so many excuses out there. Education's broken, it's too expensive. There's a million reasons, but the power really is literally in each of our hands to take responsibility for our own education, and that could be just critical thinking. So not taking at face value what we're hearing from the social media channels that are feeding an algorithm of what we want to hear, but having the critical thinking to get outside of that sphere, or to just keep learning so that people engage in lifelong learning. They don't stop learning after they get out of school. They're back to expanding their horizons and recognizing there's a beautiful world out there if we learn about it and explore it.
When you say education, obviously a strong believer, are there other avenues, though, that may not be the school route that you would recommend?
Well, absolutely. There's absolutely no reason that we should just look at traditional education. There's plenty of ways to learn. But I also don't want young people to fall into the trap that I almost fell into. I was encouraged to go to Hamburger U. I was working at McDonald's. You don't need college, go to Hamburger U. And it would have been interesting. But I'm not sure I would have ever had the privilege of leading 7-Eleven or Blockbuster. Maybe I would have been CEO of McDonald's, but I'm guessing they might have picked up somebody with an MBA instead. I don't know that for sure, but there's chances. And here's the way I look at it. Education is like this. This is a brand. We all are individuals with an identity, and we have a brand. And so I don't care if you're corporate employee or an entrepreneur, at some point, your brand matters. And education helps to support that brand value. So when I pick up that can of Coca-Cola, I know what's in it. I know it's going to taste like. It's not a generic can of cola. I know exactly what's in it. The same thing that college does for you, or a traditional education does for you, as building your brand identity. And that for the foreseeable future is going to still be pretty important.
You've had some big jobs and some big accomplishments. What are you most proud of, James?
The most proud that I've been is the ability to give back and to do things like this to help others be successful. And I've helped a lot of entrepreneurs. This same roadmap for success that I'm sharing with children helps entrepreneurs. Things like embracing change, having confidence, having clarity of communications. Those are the things that I tell kids, yes, do this in school and you'll get through. But an entrepreneur, biggest threat to an entrepreneur is fear. Things are going bad. I've had the financial markets crash on me as I had at Blockbuster. It's not the change that occurs, it's your reaction to the change that will separate winners from losers. And those are the same lessons that I'm able to share with entrepreneurs, with students. And that's what gives me pleasure today, the ability to help others find their own success.
Any other thoughts before we say goodbye, James?
Just that I'll share one last thing with you. I've coined the expression change equals opportunity. And I think that so applies to the small business people that are out here listening to this network and faithfully watching your show. Change equals opportunity. The acronym is not by accident. That CEO is the role of a CEO, whether it's small business or $1 billion company. Change equals opportunity. It's the role of a CEO.
Well said. James Keys, author, former 7-Eleven CEO and TEDx speaker, and Blockbuster too. That's a throwback. I love that. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. Great being with you.
And thank all of you for watching the Small Business Show exclusively on ASBN.com and now streaming on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Cheyenne Malone, exclusively on ASBN.com.